I'd like to invite John Horn, President and Chief Strategy Officer of Core Connect, to the stage. Join me in welcoming him. John?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
John, why don't you give us a little glimpse into what you guys are able to do at Core Connect and how you're able to deliver on customized solutions.
All right, thanks, Eric. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the invite from Ingram Micro. I believe we're actually crossing the 30-second square right now. As this industry, I've been in this space for 2 decades, focused on IoT. It was telemetry, and then it was M2M, now it's IoT. I don't know what we're going to call it in 10 more years, but it's all the same thing as we come out here to really change the world in so many ways. And for so long, for those of you who've been around, you've seen the hockey stick that's always like 2 or 3 years away. It's always coming, it's always coming. But I believe that inflection point is here. And when we hit that inflection point, extraordinary things happen. So we're excited to be part of this and to bring the value to the table that Core Connect is creating in the space. If you look at IoT today, it's a very, very diverse marketplace. There are so many different segments. Probably the most mature of all is automotive. Automotive is one that you could easily solve for the challenges that have kept IoT from becoming big. That was coverage, power, and cost. Those have been the 3 hurdles to IoT for a long time. Most cars were where the most coverage was. You had power in a car, and the ROI for fleet and pay-as-you-go insurance and all the different things that have been out there for automotive for a while, they can get the ROI because the return is so great that you can be a little bit more expensive. Now things have changed to the point where all these other marketplaces are opening up. You saw the presentation just now about agriculture. Agriculture could not work just a few years ago because there was no power where you needed it, there was no coverage where most of agriculture was, and the cost return just wasn't there. But all those things are changing today, and they're changing because we're maturing finally as an industry to get the different moving parts together. If you create the right solution, you can use it in oil and gas, you can use it in asset tracking, you can use it in logistics, you can use it in security, you can use it in agriculture with minor changes or tweaks here and there, if you create the right foundation first. And that really is the key. The challenge that we have is companies have not done a really good job of doing that. This is a study by Cisco showing that 60% of companies really underestimate the cost of launching a new IoT solution. And 75% fail. They fail because of one specific thing, and I've seen it in my career. I've seen it closer to 80, and it's hardware. They can't get the hardware right. They go through 10 versions of the hardware, and they run out of either desire or money before they get there. And the challenge is the business model for hardware designers is incented to get it wrong. If you think about it, you pay all this NRE and all this money to go build hardware for somebody, and then they have to tweak it, and they got to tweak it, and they got to tweak it to get it right, and you go through 5 versions to get it right, and design house is making a fortune. The only problem is your company or your customers running out of cash, and that's why that failure rate is so high. But I believe if you go in with the right model and the right focus and the right design principles, you change everything. At Core Connect, we do not believe in science projects. We build everything to build to scale, to go to market, so that the money is there for each of you and your customers, and they see the results that they have. So let me talk about a science project. Many of you probably know what this is. This is the biosphere. It's just north of Tucson, Arizona. To me, it's the biggest science project failure that I know of in my lifetime. They spent a few $100 million on this thing. They kept pumping more in, kept pumping, just one more thing, one more fix, and it's going to work, right? You just put in some more money. The only problem is it was supposed to be a self-sustaining environment where they could go build potentially communities on Mars or other places with its own rainforests and its own agriculture system, creating its own oxygen. The only thing was it didn't work, and the people were starving to death, and no one knew it until the people that were living there got caught running in the middle of the night to Tucson for fast food. So they were supposed to be locked in there for years, and they were sneaking out every night. Needless to say, a very, very expensive science project. Now, to solve things, you don't have to have this big, huge, complex science project. To solve things really in this space, you have to make them simple. We believe that things should be simple. We're here talking about the Internet of Things. The things are the devices. The things are what collects the data. The things is what starts the whole process. If things are not simple, it's never going to happen. We will never hit that inflection point. However, making things simple takes a lot of work and some really smart people. But when you solve for big problems, simple things happen. Most of you have probably seen either pictures or live the Roman aqueduct system. Now, I consider this something that is a very complex problem that was solved by two simple things. They had to engineer for two things that really hadn't been done before. They had to perfect the arch, and they had to come up with a way to engineer for the fall of the water so they can control it from miles and miles away and hundreds of miles of aqueduct to bring the water into Rome. Complex problem, simple solution. It really is a simple solution. So simple that 2,500 years later, some of those aqueducts are still in use today. It's an astonishing achievement. What did it accomplish? It created the first mega city in the world. It allowed them to have clean, fresh water for millions of people, and then they conquered 25% of the human population just because they had clean, fresh water. That's the need. We saw the water sensor. Agriculture needs water, but to be able to manage that water because it's a scarce resource. Again, another challenge, but can be managed through simple solutions if you do it right. So as I look at the last 20 years in this space, I started as a carrier guy. I've built carrier organizations. I've built platform companies and sold those. If you look at where this industry was 20 years ago, connectivity was a big challenge. You had to have connectivity, but there weren't very many choices and they were expensive, and that's why there were only a few solutions. Now, there are dozens of different types of forms of connectivity, models for every kind of solution you could create, and they're pretty competitive. Software platforms. There are gazillion software platforms. There's a lot of people developing new solutions, new AI, new machine learning every single day. All those things are happening, and they've really come together. But the third leg of the stool is hardware. Hardware is being designed and manufactured the same way it was 30 years ago. Nothing has changed. That's the broken part of the equation. Hardware can meet a lot of needs, but leaves a lot of it on the table. So that had to change. And Core Connect is set about to change that and change it in really significant ways. One of the ways we do it, we use what's called functional unit blocks. I'm not an engineer, so I just call them Legos. And we take these Legos and you plug them in together, and it allows you to do things very simply and easy and efficiently so that you can create new hardware. If someone comes to Core Connect and they need a device, the chances are 70%, 80%, even 90% of that device is already done and designed with us. The hardware's built and proven. The firmware's built and proven. All those things are there. All we need is to put in a couple other Legos. What does that allow us to do? It allows us to hit the market and scale in ways that no one has ever done before. We did a solution for the automotive auction industry, and it's a great solution. It solved their needs perfectly. We were able to deploy hundreds of thousands, and there will be millions of devices out there when they finish deploying. And what that allowed us to then do, because of the way we designed it with functional unit blocks, we now have a handful of automotive products with just small changes that allowed us to satisfy the needs of multiple business cases. We didn't have to start from scratch. It takes 6 to 12 months to get a new piece of hardware out there, and the chances are, if you're designing it from scratch, it's still not going to work the first time. But for us, the model is completely different. One of the other things that we do is we really try to understand right up front what the needs of the customer are. What do your customers out there want to solve the problem for? Sometimes they don't even know. So we try to get to understand their business, not only for this specific use case, but what else is going on in their business and what are their goals in 5 years. Because we can truly design that into the process that we're doing so that we make sure that when the device is done, it's ready for them and it's right the first time. The way I met the Core Connect guys, they came into my office. I was running a network company. We had a proprietary network protocol that we were building around the world, and we needed hardware. So the two co-founders of the company about 3.5 years ago walked into my office and said, we can build you this, it'll cost this, and we'll be done by this point in time, and it's going to work the first time. They walked out of my office, and all I could do was shake my head and go, these guys are so full of crap. This does not exist. There's no one on the planet that can do this. I've dealt with manufacturers and designers all over the world. It can't be done. They did it. And then they did it again. And then they did it again, building multiple products for me. And I just could not believe that this was remotely possible, but it was. So I was excited when I had the opportunity to join the Core Connect family and to be part of what they are doing and what they are doing to change really the hardware industry forever. The other thing is this last tagline here of our financial model is based upon the successful launch of a finished working product. Like I said, the design industry is based upon how many engineering hours you can get out of this product. How many times can you turn it? How many versions can you get? We don't make money until the product hits market to scale. We are incented to get it to market quickly and right the first time. If we don't do that, we never make any money. We had a company that came into us a while back, and they had a meeting with us. It was in the agricultural space. They were trying to solve something that was really basic, and you would say, why wasn't this solved 10 years ago? They wanted to do tank level monitoring and be able to manage the number of trips the trucks took out to refill these tanks. And I can't get into too much more specific than that. But the bottom line is, it's something that should have been solved a long time ago. It couldn't have been, though, because they didn't have coverage 10 years ago. They didn't have power or the way to manage power to make it work. The cost was too much. And the fourth part of that, the simple part, didn't exist for them. They've got millions of tanks. They don't want to retrofit millions of tanks. It's too dang much money. They wanted their drivers, when they went out, to be able to install whatever it was, and these guys don't know anything about electronics or equipment. They just go look at the meter and fill the stuff up. 47 days later, just think about that number. If you've been in this business a while and dealt with hardware, 47 days later, we deployed the solution during the polar vortex. It was 30 below. They didn't want it during growing season, and they wanted it quick, so we did it in 47 days. What did we do? We designed the product, we manufactured the product, we did the troubleshooting on the product, we built the product, and we deployed it to the field. It was so inexpensive for them that one saved truck roll pays for the entire project for the life of the device. 7 to 10 years of battery life, depending on how they program the solution. The drivers could install it in less than a minute with about 2 minutes of instruction. These things don't happen, but at Core Connect, we make them happen. This is what can really, truly happen with your customers today. So as you start looking at it, okay, we're not clicking. Okay, there we go. If you get it right the first time, it changes this model dramatically. And that's our commitment to you, with us, with Ingram Micro, coming in to support you and your customers. We are going to get it right the first time. We have to. There's no time to do 50 revisions. And one of the things that we do to future-proof the products is we make sure that we ask these questions and we design into the boards in advance, into the hardware in advance, the things that they may want in the future. We just don't put them in there. So when they say, oh, we now need this, okay, that's just another piece of hardware that goes on the board, and you're done. We've already designed for it. We already designed the firmware knowing that this was going to come at some point. We don't have to redo the firmware. These are all principles that people don't normally do. And it's part of one of the other things that we live by, and that's what we call design to manufacture. I was walking through a manufacturing plant just a few weeks ago, looking at their line, analyzing whether we wanted to use them for any services or not. And the guy that was managing the plant picked up a box and he showed it to me. He goes, we've had to redesign this box 3 times in order to build it. We could never build it. Designers designed the box because this is what we want, this is what we can do. But if you can't make it, and you can't make it in a viable time frame and for the right money, what good is the design? We design for manufacture. What does this mean to you? We build in Arizona, a few places in the US, but focus mainly in Arizona. We can build in the United States your product competitive with Asia. When we walk into these manufacturers and we say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to bring these text fixtures, we're going to redesign the way your line runs because this is the way it's going to work with the product, their first reaction is, you got to be kidding me. Their second reaction is, how the heck did you do that? Because if you can get tenfold the production out of the same line, now you're competitive with Asia, and you can build it here in the US. And it creates less complexities in supporting the products and everything else you do if you can just get it right. It's an absolute key to what we do and we do every day. So what's something else we've done? This is an exciting product that will be available through Ingram Micro and that you will be able to use in any form factor. One of the things we like to say is not only do we think outside the box, for us there is no box. So we have a lot of IP on this. This is an ultra-thin, smart tag. So you think about RFID. What does RFID tell you? I'm here. If you scan me, I'm here. No, now I'm over here. But it can't tell you, where have I been? What was the temperature? What was the humidity? What was the speed? Did I have some kind of tampering event? Did I have some kind of other event? These are disposable, they're small, and you could put them on a crate of vegetables, you could put them on frozen meat, you could put them on, hang on a second here, anything you want. This was a form factor that someone else wanted. I'll show you that side. This size, the size of the quarter, is the entire tag. Completely flexible. You could put it under a wine label to track your wine. You can put it on the inside a pill cap to track pharmaceuticals. You could put it on a package of frozen meat to make sure it stayed frozen through the whole process, and it's completely secure and has secure elements in it, courtesy of Kudelski, and it's part of that, one of our partners in this, it's part of that program. So this changes everything. And if you want recurring revenue on the hardware side, this is as close as you can get because they're disposable. They're inexpensive enough and flexible enough in what they do and the way the business model works that we pretty much figure they're one-time use. Even with this small little tag pinging it throughout the process, you're still going to get 6 to 12 months of battery life with this thing. You can use Bluetooth, you can use Wi-Fi, you can use cellular NB-IoT. Any of those connectivity choices you get to choose. Depends on the business model and what you're trying to accomplish. The key here is to think outside the box, understand what your customers need, and then go create it. But create it in a way that it's a viable solution for them. If they can get it on time, they can get it under the budget, and it's simple for them to use, you now have an absolute grand slam. And that's what Core Connect does each and every day. So our promise to you is, together with Ingram Micro, we are going to come out and support you and your customers, and for the first time, really make things simple in the Internet of Things. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you.